Yo, I gotta warn y'all that this one right here is about to get deep and real deep. So much to the point that the people or the powers that be was cutting us off and stopping us from what we was getting to. There was so much more to this one, but we cut it short. But we did get to the message.
Yo, welcome to the hole where no depth is too deep. This where the woke stay woke and the sleepers can't sleep. I'm Shaman Jamont, and this is my co-host.
Saxo.
We in the building. Man, I want to get straight to it, man. Our topic is a greater America, right? This ain't to discredit nothing or nobody, but this is about digging into some things that's not on the surface, some things you got to really dig for, some stuff, some information we bring into the people, a lot of stuff that people can actually read books on, get some oral tradition about, travel the world and hear this kind of stuff, or even look up and get some research on. But what we about to touch on is a greater America, man. First and foremost, you've done homework on more than just what we've been taught systematically in school and all that. So what's the first thing you would touch on about understanding the great America?
The first one?
Yeah.
Man. I mean, there's a lot of things you could touch on as far as, that a lot of the things that they gave us was the story that benefited their agenda. So,
yeah.
For example, so I would say the first thing you would do is you would listen to what do you have for what was already written here? This place got its own pyramids. This place got its own statues, its own architecture. What did those civilizations say about the people here? You know what I mean? And so, and one thing I was touching on earlier was pretty much how a lot of the architecture it got worse as time got on because it was lost knowledge. It's some knowledge from a civilization that had more knowledge about a lot. For example, they don't know how the Amazon, they don't know how they did that soil in the Amazon that pretty much it gives life to everything. And it's pretty much like, I forgot what they call it. Prater something, is what it's called, but pretty much,
but but
you know what I'm talking about. So pretty much they found a way to mix some type of bio life with the soil.
And we're going to come back to that too.
Exactly. So like there's lost technology, there's lost information. They to this day don't understand how those civilizations was able to pretty much make the forest, and it's just you can never destroy it because the soil is so rich that it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and it grew over the civilizations that were there before everybody showed up.
And technology then already proved some things. Like we got this new thing called LiDAR. The LiDAR is actually like it's something, this imaging that can look down. It can make a land disappear, or it can show deepness what's under something. And this LiDAR then showed us stuff that's in the Amazons and stuff like that to show us that we don't even really know the whole Americas like we been taught. You know what I mean? Like most of this Americas, this would blow people's mind that most of the Americas haven't even been discovered. They haven't, I mean, not been discovered, but it ain't been discovered by us. You get what I'm saying? Like this is stuff we don't even know. It ain't common knowledge for people, but that bring about several questions. Like I got to ask this question. And when I ask these questions, it's going to offend some people, but I'm not worried about that. The questions that I'm going to ask is like, where and how did the idea that Africa was the origin of humanity come from? And who was the first to state it? And when did it become widely accepted? Who created the idea itself? Now, this is the part where, this is where I say where we hold off on the religious bias, because when creation happened in the Bible, creation itself was in Genesis 1, it was cosmic. It said God created what? The heavens, the earth, the light, land, people, animals. So it's no specific geographic location that's given that says this is where, creation started. No, because when we look at the Garden of Eden, which is the first earthly location that's tied to people, right? It describes people in Genesis 2. The Bible gives us geographic clues. We got to remember that it mentions what? How many rivers? 4 rivers, right? We get the Pishon, we get the Jihan, we got the Tigris River, we got the Euphrates River. So the Bible says that the river Jahan flows through the land of Kush. So Kush is what we traditionally identify with Ethiopia and Sudan, which is the Nubia region, right? That's where the Nubians at. But then we got to look at the Tigris and the Euphrates. That's in Iraq. So plenty of people say that the Garden of Eden was in the Middle East. Then again, some people argue that the Garden of Eden could have been connected to Northeast Africa because we look at the Nile River system, the Ethiopian highlands. So we look at a lost or changed locations, and a lot of researchers or even Bible scholars, they believe that the original the geography, it no longer exists. So because we look at stuff that happened with the flood. Then we look at geological changes that came with, ancient stuff like name changing. And that's a whole nother thing that confuse people all the time, because we know names change all the time. And to this day, people change street names. People change city names, town names, all this. Like Africa used to be called Akabalan. Now we look at that and it's called Africa because it was conquered by Afrikaners. So we didn't have Africa in the Bible being called Africa. You get what I'm saying? Because if creation happened in Africa, is what I found out is that the idea of the origin of humanity wasn't created by one person. It developed over a time through this thing they call science, right? In fact, when you research it, you find out the concept is fairly new. It tied into the 1800s. That's when erasure came into play. So you read a lot
of racist things that tied into anthropology that they use
exactly
to form a lot of the theories.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you.
You read Charles Darwin, The Descent of Man. That's in
Darwinism.
Darwinism. So you read that. That's in 1871. That's where he's talking about how humans likely originated in Africa because similarities to African apes. Come on now. Now, this was his hypothesis. And well, at the time, they didn't consider it proof, but later on, they took it and ran with it, and it became a truth, right? Then we fast forward to the 1900s, and we look into the fossil evidence area, right? So you're looking at that era where it's in 1924. Pay attention. The same year as Walter Plecker reclassifying dark-skinned indigenous people. Okay, a man named Raymond Dart, he found early human fossils in South Africa. So then about 30 to 50 years later, you look at Louis Leakey and Mary Leakey. That's in the 1950s through the 1970s. They discovered ancient human ancestors, ancestors in East Africa. And this pushed the idea even further of that Darwinism, even further of Raymond Dart. You get what I'm saying? So now they all got something to go with.
Their little theory of evolution.
Yeah, so they saying that early people in Africa this is where it come from. So they genetic confirmation came from anywhere between the 1900s to the 2000s. So then they get their DNA studies, and this will show like modern humans. They talk about our ancestry and talk about how we shared back to Africa 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. But we're gonna walk into that and around that at the same time, because that's where they came up with the out of Africa theory. That's what they named it. That's what they called it. So, so that, you get what I'm saying? So, and it's all about an agenda. And then when we look at that, that's when it's widely accepted by people in the 1980s. So, and then it's pushing all the way into the 2000s. And that's when it's strongly accepted. So today, it's just a scientific agreement. Everybody agreed, out of Africa.
Exactly. But a main thing, like a lot of people like to ignore when it comes to the theory of evolution, just in general, the reason why I could never bring myself to really subscribe to it completely, and the reason is because if you look at it at its base, what they really saying about evolution, where everything really started from, how did life really began on Earth, they pretty much say either A, there was a lightning strike.
Oh yeah, that as well.
It was an asteroid that brought amino acids and proteins, which are the basis of what we call DNA.
Yeah, right.
And they call this primordial soup.
Yeah, with the sugar and all that. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so and it's like it's crazy because it's like that's the reason why I can't really subscribe to it, because you pretty much telling me that all of life came from soup,
Right.
pretty
Right.
much. You feel what I'm saying? Like you said,
Right.
these amino acids just pretty much they started combining for one reason or another, and they
Right.
started forming DNA, and then they formed a cell, and then that cell
Now-
multiplied, and then so on and so forth before you got the first life is
First
plankton
species, yeah.
and cells, and it eventually turned into a fish that eventually becomes a monkey that becomes a man, and so
Mhm.
on and so forth. And it's just
Right.
like, the whole out of Africa theory is based on that.
Yeah.
And it's just like that in itself is just like,
Right. And something that we pay attention to is when it comes to civilization, originally Africa was not even credited. So you can take that back to what we was just talking about. You look at the early Western narrative, that's in the 1800s all the way through the early 1900s. That's when they scholars claim that civilization had began in Mesopotamia, in Iraq, in the region of
Yep.
there, right? So then they use Egypt. Pay attention to this. And they separated Egypt from Africa. So
Yeah.
how is everything out of Africa, right? So culturally, we looking at it in early writings, this Africa outside of Egypt, okay? It was what was ignored, it was dismissed. But then you got, what was his name? Sheikh Diop. Then he came in the 1950s through the 80s and he argued that ancient Egypt was African. You know what I'm saying, in origin, and then that's how Africa played a big role in the early civilization, and it was controversial at the time, but he had big influence with that because what happened, that shaped the narrative too, where they started to go with that. Now you got so many stories that civilization did not start in just one place, and people say it developed independently, right? So we looking at it in multiple regions because now we get to looking at it in early places like Mesopotamia, 3500 BC, okay? Then we looking at it in Egypt, 3100 BC. We looking at it in the Indus Valley, South Asia. We looking at it in China, the Yellow River. We looking at it in Karasuk. That's 3,000 years in the Americas. And of course, we're looking at it in Africa because this is a part of this, but it's not the only origin. Then we looking at it like this, okay, Africa, especially Egypt, is a major part of what they want to classify as early civilization, because you know how they use Egypt for a lot of things and all that. But even though they go against it when they, you look at it in the biblical sense, but who created the idea, right? You get what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's all been propaganda. The deeper you dig into who created
Mhm.
these ideas and why, the more you realize that it was all propaganda to push a picture.
For sure.
Because, for example, another thing that it don't really make sense to me, because, like, for example, like they talk about the Denisovans and the other, pretty much, what are the other?
Neanderthals and the
The Neanderthal, the Denisovans, and
Yeah.
pretty much all of those. So
Mhm.
my question is, when they were supposedly going to war with the Homo sapiens,
Right.
what race were they going to war with? Were they going to war with Africans? Were they going to war with Europeans?
Now get it
Who were they
right.
going to war with?
Now get it right. Now get it right. Because that's what build. We look at that, how it build over time. We get this Darwin theory. We get to looking at fossils. We get to looking at genetics. But for
Exactly.
civilization in Africa, we looking at early Western scholars. We looking at this wasn't Africa who came up with this. This was Western scholars who came up with this. So they mostly excluded Africa. But later scholars like Diop, he was like, you know what? No, we part of this. And that's what made it a bigger thing for them to all focus on this idea. So the idea wasn't created, it was corrected. It was expanded over time. So if you look at it like in a scientific sense, these people in Africa, okay, they come from the earliest civilization, what we've been taught, okay? I'm saying that not to be funny, I'm saying it to be for real, because that's what they give us, you know what I'm saying? So we look at early history is just biased, it's incomplete. So this where we start to look at this like, that's a slap to my face. You know what I mean? It's all disrespect. You're not giving me, you're giving me wishy-washy information. You're not giving me stuff that's well-grounded. We got civilizations, we got stuff that's older than Egyptian pyramids right here in the Americas. You see, we can take that to Cahokia, Illinois, where there's
Yeah,
so many mounds. Mounds. We got the mound builders here. We got the Mississippian culture. We even got the
exactly.
Watson break. We got stuff like that forced them to rewrite what they talking about. We got an ancient America here. We got Serpent Mound. We got symbolism that they had ignored. This isn't just a mound, bro. We talking about knowledge that's carved into a land. We talking about things
Well,
that's built. We talking about stuff that's built for thousands of years, plus later on with some modifications. But we got different massive effigy shape. We looking at visible stuff from above. Then we get to look at what's overlooked, what's possible, what's astronomical, what's alignment. Now we starting to think that, okay, this wasn't no primitive art. This was intellectual design. It's like an
no, for real.
ancestral landscape thing. You know what I'm saying? We see the white sands. We get the history of that, and then what? That stuff. What? Them are fossil footprints. How do you get fossil footprint? If I step right now in the sand, wouldn't be no fossil footprint. You get what I'm saying?
For millions of years.
It's technology that we not bearing that they was able to bear. We starting to see fossilized human footprints alongside mammoth, giant sloths. We see stuff like that. We got the part that's just so crazy. These tracks, they erode, they vanish, right? Like some disappear within a few years, and we literally losing evidence of ancient America in real time. But I'm talking about Earth showing itself like America is more than just what they telling y'all is. We look across the Midwest, we got circles, squares, octagons, miles wide of all kinds of layouts just showing us stuff that they have to show us from drones right now, stuff that we know that extraterrestrials can see when they doing their thing. They know where to land, they know where to be, they know what to do. The Earth is working. You get what I'm saying? But many people don't know that all our artifacts and our stuff is buried under farms, cities, roads, all this stuff. They covering up great sites. They covering up
We
sacred
built this
places.
civilization on top of another one.
Exactly. And you know what's so crazy, bro? They don't have the mathematical understanding. They don't have the labor coordination, because these people, they don't align like our ancestors did here in the Americas. They don't align like our ancestors did in Africa. None of that. They don't see what some people see, how, lunar cycles. You know what I'm saying? This ain't nothing nobody was guessing with civilization. This is stuff that was measured with intelligence. So we looking at technology, how it's revealing itself. It's showing us stuff in real time because we got this thing called LiDAR. Like I said, LiDAR is being used just to show us sites and stuff like Cahokia, to find out what these hidden features and how it's revealing the structures that's beneath. It show us forests, it show us swamps, it show us terrains that's all distorted, stuff you
Cities,
can't see
entire
with your
cities.
naked. Yeah, exactly. Stuff
That's
they don't
buried
understand.
by forest now.
Exactly. So my thing is, why are we being told so much less about the Americas? And I could say it could be possibly because they just honestly don't know. I mean, there's people who know. There's a group of information that's grouped
I
up.
think,
Go
I
ahead.
honestly think there's more to that.
And dig deep on that though.
Because, and the reason why I say that is, I feel like there's been this ancient battle, and this right here, this is some information I did come across, and it's just like it made sense because it's breadcrumbs that lead to this. Remember we were talking about the whole dragon thing, right?
Most definitely.
Okay, and we talk about all of these countries that have this flag with this either it's a dragon or a griffin.
Dragon. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it's
No,
always
dragon or what? You cut off.
or it was a dragon or a griffin.
Oh, Griffin. Yeah.
So pretty much like if you look at throughout history, it's always been this battle between the dragon and the
Mhm.
eagle.
Mm.
And if you pay attention to the
Water.
symbol, if you pay attention to the symbolism, it's more than just those two symbols fighting each other. And
Right.
if you look at Russia, they represent, like they still like they act like they're against America for the most part, but they still represent the eagle. America is the eagle.
Right.
Rome used to have the eagle.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, and they've been going to battle with these civilizations that have these serpent deities, or they
Right.
follow some serpentish. Like in China, they just called it the dragon.
Yeah, for real.
In
they
America,
big on
they
that.
called it I forgot how they pronounced it. Kuluakan. It's a
You got me.
giant feather dragon. That's what they call it, but it's Kuluakan or something like that. That's what they believe in America. And then it's just like in Africa, they had one that was the Naga. You see what I'm saying?
Naga.
Yeah. So it's like you got all of these different civilizations that have this, and all the civilizations that are represented by the dragon are the same places to this day that have pyramids. You see what I'm saying? And when we talk about this erasure of a civilization, this ancient battle, it's something that's been going on that it's been deliberate, but it's been like hidden from us.
Right.
That's why it's been two stories. It's like the way these countries go to war for
Right.
clear reasons, but they just lie to everybody and say it's for defense or something like that. This has been going on for millennia of them trying to erase somebody's trying to be erased. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? And if you see these flags, it's always something of like either the eagle or the griffin eating the dragon. You know what I'm saying? Or putting a spear into the dragon. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Like that's what's on these ancient house flags. You know what I mean? Like when they used to have these in Europe, I don't know what you would call it for exact, but they like dukes and you know what I mean? Like they had these different labels in these different countries and things like that. They would have different symbolism of eagles and dragons, and nobody really think about why America's symbol is the eagle. Why, you know what I'm saying? Nobody really think of, we just accept it. You see what I'm saying? We're just like, okay, that's the American symbol. That's on the, you know what I'm saying? That's on that, we keep that on the flag, we put that on the dollar bill, we know, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And everything that they do is behind this symbol, but nobody really think about what that means. Just like nobody think about, you see what I'm saying? And it's just like, it is something to this story, you know what I mean? I haven't really been able to bridge it together yet, and I'm still gonna keep digging on that one. But it's
And that's
something
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
That's
you know, but it's
supposed to
something
get
tied. These pyramids, these mounds, you see what I'm saying? And that's why I said I believe it was an interconnected culture, an ancient one.
Right. Right. So here's the part that I feel. Go ahead.
No, you good. I was just to close it up. I just feel like the current civilization that's dominating now have been at war with that civilization for thousands of years, and this is close as they ever been to getting rid of them.
Right. And that's true, because I see the part that people don't like to say out loud is some of this stuff wasn't lost. It's understudied. It's purposely misclassified. It's ignored. Because the earliest narrative, that's what showed that all this civilization came from somewhere else. And if they say the Americas was late, it's evidence that showed that they couldn't have been, because America got the oldest tree out of all the continents. The oldest tree is called the Methuselah tree. And it's just like in the Bible, who was the oldest person to live? Methuselah lived 969 years. But this tree that we're talking about is over 5,000 years old. Well over 5,000 years old. Still, then you got stuff that's still hidden under these jungles. It's waiting to be found by this LiDAR stuff to show what's really there, what's literally disappearing before we could study it. So we see ancient America. It's not just history; it's unfinished discovery. So we're not at the end of the story. We barely opening the book.
No,
you get what I'm saying?
No.
So the strongest argument that people use to claim America was the first land is we break this down piece by piece. We ain't giving you no cap, no none of that. We showing you that, okay, we got the most ancient rocks. If this place is so old, and I know you could say everything used to be connected and all that, you know, that too might be a big lie. But you know, it do fit together on the jigsaw puzzle piece when we look at it from up high, and who gave us that sight, right? But anyway, keeping it on the subject, you got to look at it. America got the most ancient, the most ancient rocks. So America has the oldest land. The oldest land, because if we got the most ancient everything here, the oldest rocks are in North America, so this must be the first land, right? You got to think about that. We produce so much stuff. In reality, the Acosta Nice, the complex, we got 4 billion years old. That's what that is, tons and all that. But that's the oldest living things is right here in America. We got the oldest living tree, the oldest organisms. So when you think about that, then hold on, we got the oldest organisms? Well, how the heck is anywhere else the motherland that shows that life started here?